Good afternoon. A very warm welcome. This is the 5th day of Crossing Europe, and this afternoon is dedicated to one of our really dearest and special guests this year, Aliona van der Horst. We had the pleasure to dedicate this year's tribute to her work. She is a filmmaker which was part of the program already twice in recent years, but this year we really tried to make a package and to invite herself to Linz, and we were successful. And that's why we are really happy that we will have a tribute talk today with her. And yes.
Yeah, and we're really thankful and happy that Aliona is spending almost the entire festival with us, which is really great. And the tribute talk will be hosted by Neil Young, who is a dear friend of the festival and has hosted many tribute talks before. So we absolutely trust in what he will do now. And I think we're going to hand over the stage to both of them now.
Yes, a very warm welcome, Aliona and Neil.
Join us. So, thank you, Sabina and Kati, and thank you to the people who've joined us in this beautiful Linz day today upstairs, and we can have a nice chat with Aliona van der Horst, who's our star guest and tribute recipient of this year's festival. And it's been great to be able to see your films on the big screen as they should be seen. I'd seen Boris Rigi 15 years ago, and have had strong memories of it. I rewatched it, and I remembered a lot from the film, but to be able to then see other films that I hadn't seen, I know the audiences have been very appreciative. The obvious question is when retrospectives like this happen, because you've had them in Kiev, Belgrade, Barcelona, I think in the last 10 years or so. This is obviously the freshest, the first one for 7 years. Do you take this opportunity to go back and rewatch your films, or do you, once you make a film, is that it? You move on to the next one?
Well, I rewatched quite a lot of films this time. I don't really remember if I did it before. Well, it was a bit like if I had time to come and if I had time to watch it. But I kind of liked to rewatch it and also to feel what I think now about the film, to revisit them. And I had a really strange experience that, I for this festival, I needed to digitize a really old film that I shot on 60 millimeters together with Masha Ooms, Voices of Bam. And I was sitting in a studio just before, coming to the festival. And then somewhere halfway, we were just, checking technical things, like you sit there and you're not really into the film. And then the strange thing happened, and then halfway the film, both of us were very, very quiet. And on 3/4 of the film, I started to cry about the film, because I kind of forgot what I made. And that's really strange. And I just came from the screening of Water Children that I made 13 years ago. And I thought, I'm not going to rewatch it. And then after the first 5 minutes, I thought I kind of forgot what I made. And then I said, I need to rewatch it because, I know parts, but other parts kind of were away. And then when I saw it again, then, it triggers all the memories of making it. And so.
Something that I will talk about later is how the films are often collaborations. You mentioned there Masha Ooms, and the latest film, Gerlach, is co-directed with Luc Bouwman. But also, you're working with editors and very important collaborators. But also, I get the sense that your films are often an opportunity for you to make contact with people. Because, for instance, in Turn Your Body to the Sun, you accompany your friend who then goes to revisit her family. And in Gerlach, you make contact with him and things like this. So, again, when rewatching this film, I would imagine that in Water Children with Tomoko, which, of course, it's sort of her story largely, but your story also a bit also. Presumably for you, it kind of, you remember the people and how they were when you filmed them.
Yeah, very much so. And with Tomoko, I just realized that I didn't know her very well. Somebody asking the audience, how did you meet or how well did you know each other? And after I made the Boris Rigi, she came to see. I didn't know her, and she was with an audience, and she watched the film, and then she told me about this project, and I said, "Oh, maybe I like to make a film about it." So, and the same thing happened with Turn Your Body to the Sun. Sana Valiulina, the protagonist, I didn't know her. No, I only knew her professionally because she's a writer, and I asked her to come to see a rough cut of Love is Potatoes, and then she said, "I'm going to search for my father." I said, "Oh, can I film it?" So it's kind of, it's, you know, one film leads to another, and in some strange way, I feel most comfortable, well, with the latest films that I made, to film people that I know a bit. And they're not my best friend, but still, you have a lot of documentary filmmakers, and they, you know, they go and they do research thoroughly, and then out of 100 people, they chose one person. They really cast, and I don't know why, but I just, you know, I let myself, you know, kind of trust the process, or I don't know, trust the people I meet, or I'm just, you know, very interested in like this person. I think like, oh, and of course it's also a kind of casting, you know, if somebody would not fit in a film, I would not make it, and I meet a lot of people. So, but still, I think this making films together with somebody and not so much about a person is something that I cherish in my work. Yeah.
In the Dutch word gezellig, sort of, it's kind of impossible
you
to...
love it, huh? This word. Yeah. Every time I meet you, you say, "Oh, gezellig, gezellig."
It's a gezellig festival, and you're a gezellig person. But the Dutch have this idea of like gezellig is like people. It's like coziness.
Gemütlich.
Yeah, it's like cozy, the togetherness, and it's, you know, in a country which is very crowded, 18 million people sort of crammed into this small corner of Europe. How do you get along with people, and being able to get along with people in a Dutch way, which is, you know, it's not necessarily bouncingly friendly to everybody all the time, but, you know, to be able to have that intimate contact, I think, is what it comes down to. And I see this often in your work, and the degree to which you put yourself in the film or choose not to. You know, so for instance, Voices of Bam, you know, it's very much observational, but in other films we see, you know, in Water Children, we see your hands, we see your face. In Gerlach, you're more kind of out of it. But again, that's getting into the sort of practicalities and the editorial decisions of as a filmmaker. I'd like to also to ask, it's a kind of a continuation. When you sort of think, I have to get all of these films ready for this retrospective, and you then have like a body of work, a corpus. It's like,
but I never thought it would be a career. It's really, you know, I finished my first film and thought, well, this is probably my last. Who's going to ever give me money? And then, oh, maybe I can make one other film, and then I stop. You know, and then after I made the film, I was so, you know, tired. I thought I will never make a film again, and so it went a bit on and on and on like this. And now I suddenly have a body of work.
And so diverse. I mean, there are similarities between the films, and we can say Love is Potatoes is kind of, in a way, a kind of mirror film of Turn Your Body to the Sun. But watching the films all together in a week, you're really struck by how different they all are.
Yeah, but it is also like, as an I think one of who said it, one of the famous, I think Derek Jarman said it, but I'm not sure, said that every time you make a film, the next film should be totally opposite. And I think and then I thought like, I also feel that you need to kind of give yourself a new something that you think like, wow, I never worked with animation. Let's try animation. I never worked with archive. Let's try archive, just to feel how you would do with all these different sort of materials, you could say. You know, if you're talking about paintings, it's like watercolor and oil, and so you want to experience yourself in different ways and see if you can make something out of that.
So it's a way of keeping it fresh for you.
Yes, totally.
The kind of catch is if somebody says, oh, there's a new film by Aliona von der Horst, it's like, oh, what will that be?
What will
Because
that
if
be?
you
Yeah,
say there's a new
yeah.
film by Frederick Wiseman or a new film by Michael Moore or Werner Herzog, you've got a pretty good idea what it's going to be. But
Yeah.
with yours, it's kind of like, it could really be almost anything that we get.
Yeah, it's true. And I think with the when I speak to artists, it's always when an artist wants to, visual artists, when they want to try a new style, their gallerists are always against because, but the other style sells better, and but that's boring, in a way. But then again, well, as far as I can see, like in the Dutch film, art house film audience, they kind of go like to see a new film by Aliona van der Horst, whatever it is. So there must be something that is, that people think like, okay, it will not be a waste of time.
We don't know what it will be, but we know it'll be a good one. So this
Yeah,
is,
maybe.
this is
I
what they
hope
look
so.
for.
Yeah. And there is, of course, there is something, that I have kind of body of work where my films are more personal. And I think half of my work deals with Russia and the traumatic past of Russia. And Gerlach is actually the first film I made in the Netherlands. So it's always, I traveled all these other countries and
Finally come home.
Yeah, finally come home. Yeah. So it is diverse and it is, but I think maybe it's. I'm always looking for some kind of intimacy. Well, in a good sense, with the protagonists and something real, something. That's what I heard from the audience. For instance, there was some people who watched Voices of Bam. One of them was Iranian, and she said, like, yes, but this is real. This is the stories we hear in your films is like how I experience it. And somebody else in the audience said, like, yeah, we have, of course, Kiarostami, but there I feel that, the director wants to put some, the way he sees it onto the people he portrays. And with your film, I feel it's more, more complex maybe, or more diverse, or more real in that way. And I think in every film I'm looking, just for this and for a kind of, I hate the word. Do you have a better word than poetic approach?
Delicate.
Oh God, So I always, poetic approach, and then I think, oh, people hate poetry. Why should I say poetic approach?
But you do find ways of kind of making the films poetic without it feeling kind of precious, because I mean, poetry can be. And Boris Ricci is a poet, and his poetry is not what people will call poetic, so it can work. Voices of Bam is the oldest film that we're showing here. It's from 2006 and it's co-directed with Masha Ooms. Mm-hmm. It's not your first film because you'd made Lady with the White Hat in 1997 as a student project, but it had great success internationally, winning awards. After the Spring of '68 in 2001 and the Hermitage Dwellers in 2004. Is this because you prefer those early films to stay in the archive, or was it just
not at all? I needed to choose, and I think 6 was the maximum. And I think I would love to have shown the film after the Spring of '68 because it's also a film about my parents and about me, so it's like the first personal film when nobody was making personal films, and I'm not saying it's not an ego document, but I'm a bit in it, also without wanting it, and then Love is Potatoes is also kind of there is a bow from one to the other, and the Hermitage, I love it very much, but it was just too much. Yeah.
And so, for people who've seen your films here, is there a way of actually seeing the other films? Is there
yes.
online? Or?
I put it many films free online on my website, alionavanderhorst.com. So I'm not going to make a profit anyway. So I thought I better put them online. Who cares? Then they're going to be seen anyway. Yeah.
No, I think it's nice that the audience can discover those films intimately for themselves and
for sure. Just my first name, alionvanhorst.com. It's very easy website.
And
not even a perfect website. I designed it myself, and I'm really bad at it.
It's pretty good. I was looking at it. It's pretty useful. But as you say, when you made the first film, there was never a kind of grand plan to become a filmmaker because you studied literature at Russian literature in the university in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And then you studied film in some way, or how did you translate? To go from Dostoevsky to documentary is a bit of a jump.
Actually, I'm very happy that I studied something before from my background, I would never, I never thought I was creative in a way. I don't know. It was just not in my head that I could go to a film school. But I became an interpreter. A Russian interpreter, and it was the 90s, so I had a lot of work, and then I thought, oh my God, I don't want to stay an interpreter all my life, but maybe along the way I will find something that really interests me, and then I'm going to make it my profession. So and then one day I was invited to go on a train from Hoek van Holland, it's from Holland to Moscow. For film students as an interpreter. I thought, why not? And then it's really true. I never thought about it, and then the magic happens in those 2 days, because I never thought that documentary could be about filming a train, knocking on all these doors and asking people to tell about their life, and just to fulfill your curiosity with the camera. And I was allowed to do it all. And I was like, but these are normal people and they will go to the film school. And, but if this is documentary, well, then I have a lot of themes I can think of myself. And so I kind of, very fast, I kind of made a first film, and then I got into the school, and it was like heaven. And it was like, but this is really what I want to do. And and I discovered editing for myself, because I had to make a kind of film to get into the school. And it was, I still, to this day, I remember the magic of, it was back then, it was 1992 or 3. And it was like, VHS cassette 1, VHS cassette 2, play, record play on the same time. You had to press both, like boonk, and otherwise you had a gap, like, and you had to do it all over. But the whole fact that I kind of discovered, but this is how you make a story, and it's it's still something I think it's just it's like an addiction to do it every time again. Magic.
But were you familiar with, obviously the great Dutch documentary filmmaker is Joris Ivens.
No!
And then a bit later we had Hedy Honigman.
Yeah, she was then starting. But before I went to film school, I went to the ITVA festival and I saw 40 films. So I just went there and, kind of tried to educate myself, and then... but
not necessarily with Dutch. It was you were just watching whatever
it was. Yeah. And I thought also the first time I watched Joan van der Keuken, I thought, I don't get it. And I really needed to educate myself and understand, like, why do people think he's a great filmmaker if I just don't understand his films? So it was really, I had to start bottom up or something,
And IDFA, which is the International Documentary Festival of Amsterdam, which is pretty much the biggest documentary festival in the world, and has been going for 40 years or something like this. And as I say, you have the tradition of Joris Ivens, Hedy Honigman, yourself, the Latastas. There's a whole kind of universe of Dutch documentary. We don't have so many big Dutch fictional filmmakers in the same way. They tend to have to go to Hollywood or Verhoeven. What is it about the Dutch, the fact that they are so strong with documentary? Is it simply the fact that television has always put lots of money into it? It's always been endorsed, or is there something about the Dutch mentality which is I don't know, curious and wants to tell stories in a non-fictional way? Sorry, this is a big question.
Yeah, well, I think I still try to figure out if what you're saying is a kind of cliche, because that is like you look at the Dutch paintings and then, they're always depicting a normal life, not some saints and, So, or Dutch people are Calvinistic, so they're not so into, making up other worlds. I don't know, but I think we just had also a really good funding system. When I don't know, we had, of course, Jan van der Keuken, who is also a self-made man in a way, and he's produced himself. He's a cineast, so he's doing it all by himself. But I'm not sure, if that's really the case. But I think we had a lot of great television documentaries in the Netherlands as well. We had, my biggest example was called Diogenes, and it was like it was between documentary and report, but it was really deep, and it was every week on Dutch television. So but I don't know why there's not so much fiction. I think people are just, not it used to be not really great, and now it's getting better. So it's a bit hard to answer.
But
yeah,
a lot of filmmakers prefer not to talk about the distinction between documentary and fiction. They say we're just filmmakers, and you want to put this in boxes later. But from your perspective, in terms of you make films in the way you make them, you deal with real people, you tell their stories. Of course, there are scripts, you write things, you shape the material. But it was never tempting to you to sort of create a completely fictional story.
Well, yeah, everybody keeps asking me this, and and to be honest, what I'm just every time I think, I would love to, but then I'm terrified of being on a set with 50 people. And for a long time, that was really, what it was if you wanted to go into fiction. And now it's changed, so never say never. And but I think what is interesting, but it can also kind of be hybrid. But for me, what is interesting always with documentaries is that you learn so much along the way, and you learn so much about, people you will never know, and what you also mentioned about, being in touch with people and having, real relationships with people in the films, and in some way, I'm sure. This is also what the audience feels when they watch films. You can sense if it's a real conversation with the director, or if it's only like I'm doing an interview or whatever, without really, opening up yourself.
And I think also this issue of trust, because obviously for a documentary filmmaker, with trust with their subjects, but also the audience has to trust the filmmaker when you're watching the film. And if everybody's a happy, lovely thing, then it's obviously fake. But like there was a moment in Love Is Potatoes where you're on the phone with the aunt who doesn't want to get involved, and she's very tough to talk to, and you put that whole conversation in, and you don't really kind of get through to her, and she kind of hangs up the phone. So it's important to have that kind of, not everybody's going to be friendly with you and have a wonderful lifelong friendship.
Yeah, but I always saw making documentaries is like, putting yourself into the world and trying. I'm a very hands-on person, so I'm really bad at, of course I write a script, but I really want to trust the process of making films and change it along the way, if possible. And also, if I talk to people, or if things happen, I just, for me, it's not interesting if I know beforehand the outcome. And that is maybe also an answer to your question, why don't you make fiction? I think, in a way, I would be bored if I would make a kind of fiction. So I write a script, and then I only need to kind of fill in what I wrote, without being able to improvise. So no, I like to change. I like to, I'm also a very reactive person. The moment I see something and I think, yes, this is good for my film, or no, it's not good for my film, but I cannot, think of it beforehand. I have a really bad imagination, so maybe I'm very Dutch.
But you were talking about how the films get made and how what the funders or the producers would say. So if you go to make a film not quite knowing what it will be, you know, you have to be very persuasive in the funding process to sort of say, well, we're going to make a film about this, but if we don't know what the solution will be or the destination, there's trust, because they have to trust you that you will get somewhere. I mean, like in Boris Rougi, where you're knocking on the doors, and the film's only 60 minutes, and about 5 minutes is people not letting you do things, but of course then you're seeing the milieu of his area, so it's not like wasted time in any way. But you incorporate those sort of random moments because you can't control it, and you wouldn't want to control it.
No. And I think, you know, the way I wrote, for instance, the script of Boris Rougi, I said like, okay, these are the themes. We have this, and then you have like 10 ways to approach the theme. So the film. And sometimes you succeed, and others, because I think I even wrote like, oh yeah, we're going to film in jail, and we're going to film in the factories, and because he has so many things about the factories, and also we're going to meet all his friends who he was with, like James Joyce, you know, who wrote about his friends, and Boris Rougi as well. And then we found nobody, and then we were not allowed to go into the factories, and then I said, okay, what other themes do I have? So you kind of, you know, you try a bit here, you try a bit there, and then you try to make, you know, then you make your soup. Yeah, I don't know if you cook, do you follow the recipe, or you just, you know, put things in and then you?
I'm the least cooking person probably in
that's
Austria,
the wrong question.
but I followed the recipe that I made in my head about 20 years ago, and it's the simplest possible thing. So, I know what you mean about like, you know, do you to what degree
improvise.
Do you improvise?
That's the thing that you do, and that's also very important to be able to. And actually, somebody just mentioned it also to me. You know, when things really go terribly wrong, I have like this strange reaction. I think, finally. It's really every time with film, you know, when things go right, I get a bit bored, and then things, you know, just don't work at all. And then the whole, if I am with a crew, everybody is like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then I kind of, you know, I really.
But it's the challenge, as you said. You know, it's how do you
the challenge
keep it fresh?
Is so nice. Yeah, then you keep it fresh, and then you think like, oh, how do I make something out of this? And then also, what is also very nice about the situation when things really go wrong is that you think, okay, it's a disaster anyway. So whatever happens now is winst, profit. What you say is
like a benefit. Something good must come out of something bad.
Yes. So whatever, you know, everything is ruined anyway. So and then you don't have to. Then you lose your own expectations of what it should be like, and then new possibilities open up, and that's interesting. But having said that, you know, when I reread my scripts later, I think, oh, but you know, because you know, I write them, then I don't look at it, and then somewhere at the end of the editing, I start looking and think, oh, but I wasn't so far off anyway. So it's not. So I think writing is really important. You know, I think it is really good to have some time, to take some time to put your ideas and your thoughts on a piece of paper, and then, you know, and not just go and film and not think of why you are going to film. For most of people, well, for me it works.
I think it is still surprising to some people that a documentary has a script, that a documentary is written, and it doesn't mean exterior day. No. We approach this. I mean, as you say, it can be it doesn't even have to be written down at all, but that something has to be there.
No, but the core, you need to know what the film will be about, the theme. Like they let you, as also in fiction film, you need to write a log line, and so what is the film essentially about? And for instance, also like Voice of Bomb is about surviving and how to deal with loss or something. So, something very general. But if you lose this and you're not thinking about it, that the film can go, whatever way.
And it went to the way that it really kind of put you internationally, kind of, because you'd had success in the Netherlands, and this was the one. I mean, it won the prize and it won a special mention in Tribeca, was shown internationally, and then that kind of got to there. But I was thinking, when you said about overcoming obstacles, I mean, you've been making films for 27 years, and it's impossible to have a 27-year career if you're not persistent and you keep going through it. With Boris Ruzhi, was that, as I say, you studied Russian literature, and he was a Russian poet, obviously. Was that the connection there? Was it that you knew him from your literature? And what was your emphasis when you studied Russian literature?
My emphasis was actually, when I studied Russian literature, it's early childhood memories of a Russian symbolist, Andrei Bely, and Nabokov, because both were writing about their childhood from 2 to 5, and no other writers did it. And it ended up that I made a short film in film school called Memorabilia, where I asked people to tell me their first memories and what they meant to them, and the very, very strange first memories people tend to have. So I kind of used it later. So that was, but with Boris Ruzhi, I thought like, oh, maybe I should one day make a film about, how much people in Russia love poetry. And then didn't happen. And then a translator of poetry said to me like, what, you don't know this poet Boris Ruzhi? You have to buy his book. And then I bought the book, and then I read the Dutch translation to my husband, and I thought, oh, but these poems are really, even if you don't get all these other layers, it's still beautiful. And then I met, he already was dead, and I met his widow and his son, and we had also a very strange kind of meeting, because she bursted out in tears, and I kind of tried to console her without knowing her, which was really strange, but in some way, it's also a kind of connection, I think there is always a strange connection with the people I film. That's also why I don't make too many films, because I think it's really important to not make a film and then, say, thank you very much, I'm off. But with most of the people, I'm still in touch. And I think it's important because it's just a way of life, making films. It's not something you do and then you forget. And with her, I'm still in touch. And and not because I need to. It's because we really kind of became friends. Yeah.
And with each film, more people to keep in touch with.
Yeah. So that's the way. I don't want to have too many
more Christmas cards. But it's funny that I didn't know about the Nabokov thing, and I don't know about Bailey's life story. But obviously, Nabokov was Russian from a very cosmopolitan background, learned French and English, and all that. Went to the US and had a whole career there, in kind of straddled. He was a Russian writer, became an American writer. Hedy Honigman, who I just mentioned, was from Peru, and so she had this sort of double identity. And you have also kind of this double influence. Yeah. And I don't think it's coincidental that that you and Hedy Honigman both emerged in documentaries. That you have this connection with Nabokov. That the idea that you combine two massively different cultures. I mean, geographically and mentally, and I can't think of two more different types of people than Dutch and Russians. But and again, this is something that which you've addressed many times in various ways in your work. And without that, do you think you would have become an artist? Because is it the combination of these two very different flavors, as you might say, that creates the taste?
Well, I'm not sure, because I wouldn't be me if I wouldn't be, So, but what I think what really helped, I would just make different films about different topics, and maybe I would make fiction, or for instance, or whatever, or do something completely different. But for me, I think I was kind of lucky. Well, as a child, I always traveled, with my mother to Russia, and I never understood the country because it was Soviet Union. I just didn't get it as a child, coming from the Netherlands, what it was all about with this Lenin, and not, you were not supposed to talk about politics, and people were standing in long rows and crying when they listened to, some Russian singers. My mother just started crying with Vysotsky, and I was like, it's a Russian singer and I just didn't. So you feel a lot, but you don't understand, and that is always a really good, motor to start investigating something, so investigating other topics and see the country for yourself. Like, okay, but what is my relationship to it? So that is, and I'm still not done, I'm afraid, but I cannot go there anymore because of making too politically, films now. But still, it is something that is part of making it, and the thing is, I think what it makes it easier when I don't know how it is with Hedy Honigman, but for me, when I went to Japan, when I went to Iran, because I come from this dual background, it's easier to understand another culture, because you think, oh, but this is, for instance, Japan is very a culture of, being together, and it's still a very strange culture, but still you understand maybe more than if I would be like super, super Dutch.
And
yeah.
Was it? Oh, no, it was the Portuguese. That the Japanese were the only country that they allowed to go
the
there.
Dutch. The Dutch
yeah.
Yeah. They had an island. Yeah, the Dutch ones. Yeah.
So there was some connection. There's the thing that your aunt says, where she says, you do speak Russian, but your understanding is that of a foreign person, and it's like delivered. Actually, she says it in a very Dutch way.
Yeah.
It's like dumpf. That's you told. You speak Russian perfectly, but da 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 da. And again, this idea of identity.
Yeah,
and
but,
it's like,
of course, it's like, I think and that is something. Yeah. Also, Hedy Honigman experienced. She made beautiful films also about, like, today it's 4th of May, which is like the dodenherdenking. What is it in like when you remember the death of the Second World War? And she was the one who made a film which is called 2 Minutes of Silence, which is about it. And there was no other Dutch person making this about this very Dutch ritual. And for me, it's the same. Being an outsider is something why you can, why I could look at Russia and, the past and the traumas, because I was an outsider. If I would have been living inside Russia, I would not probably be able to make those things. I would think like, well, this is normal, this is how it goes. And so sometimes you need an outsider to make a film. And that is also a bit, so you need to be in and out at the same time.
Just again, thinking of when you're in Boris Rizhi's neighborhood, do you speak Russian with a Dutch accent, so they would hear that?
No.
So they would not audibly hear that you were not Russian?
No, but they think they don't understand from which city I am. So I don't have a kind of specific talk. Yeah.
And Aliona, the name, it's a Russian
Aliona,
name.
yeah.
Aliona.
Yeah.
There's the film by Boris Barnett, but you're not named. The name does not come from. It's a film from I think 62 or
really?
late 50s. Very beautiful film.
Oh.
So maybe you're named after that. But for the people who don't know the story of how your parents, because it is such a kind of remarkable story that I mean, you can tell it better than me, that they met and they wanted to get married, and they did get married, and the idea was that your father went back to the Netherlands and your mother was going to follow straight away, but things didn't work out like that. Maybe you can...
Yeah, and I made a film about it, which is not being shown here. It's called like After the Spring of '68, because... my mother was actually I didn't know what happened. It took her 5 years to come to the Netherlands, and it was like a horrible time for both of them, because they didn't know if they would ever be together again. And it all, well, I give a big spoiler, but it all was because Prague happened, like 1968, yeah?
68, yeah.
And then the Dutch Communist Party broke with the Soviet Communist Party, and they tried to, and my father back then was a communist, but he lost faith, but still, back then it was like that. And then he was kind of they told her, "Oh, you can have your wife come with you if you could strengthen the ties again between the Dutch and the Russian Communist Party." And he couldn't. He was just a normal, ordinary person. So my mother was a kind of hostage of the system in a way, you could say. And this is how my life started. Yeah. And they never spoke about it. It was terribly traumatic. Nobody understood back then what it meant to somebody. Yeah.
And when you say you never talk about it, does your father appear in any of your films or speak in your films? Because I know Herlach is dedicated to him, and you sort of see images of him sometimes.
Yeah, well, the film that I didn't show, that we're now talking all the time about, this After the Spring of '68, that's the film, where my father has the biggest role, and he tells about it. Yeah.
Because obviously your mother appears, incredibly powerfully and movingly in Loving Potatoes when she dies in the film, and the way that you present her death is really...
in the photo.
And then it goes to black. I mean, you see the movement of her thing, and then it cuts to black, then you go to the animation. And so, she knows that she's in the film. She can't talk at that point. But I think it's, in these films, you're clearly dealing with your relationship with your parents, clearly, in the films. I mean, were they always kind of understanding and supportive of the fact that Aliona is now a documentary filmmaker, this is her career, she's given up this nice job as an interpreter, and now she's going to study film? I mean, did they take a very Dutch attitude about this of, make sure it's a good, solid thing? Or were they just kind of like, be free, be free?
No. It was really a bit like, well, they were surprised. And then, but I said, but when I finish, I will work at some educational channel and I will have like my stable income. And that's what I thought, like, okay, now for 4 years I can be really, play around, and then I will do something serious. And then when I started to film them, they were, I thought it was back then, but it was like, it's a film from 2000 or 2001. And nobody was making, well, not a lot of people were making films about their parents. And my parents were really afraid of what I would do. And my mother really didn't want to appear close up because she had wrinkles. And, and I was not allowed to interview her. It's all in the film in the end. But because then she felt that I was like the KGB. So it was not easy to film them. And then and I felt terrible. I thought, oh my God! And then maybe I end up making a film and hurting them. But it's really good to know that you might, to have this experience, what you actually do to your protagonists, like the ethical question, like to expose them to a big audience, and also how they could feel about it. In the end, most of the films and most of the protagonists, the moment you have success, people will not, criticize you for being in a film. This has happened also to my father. My father said, "Oh, they will know I have been a communist, and the neighbors would know." But the neighbors started to treat them as celebrities, and that's really, And the same thing happened to Gerlach. He was also a bit like he has like this hunchback and it's like So he was okay with it, but he said, "I don't care." But of course he kind of cared, but now, everybody sees him as a celebrity. Nobody is talking about the way he's looking. So it can be a really healing and fulfilling experience for protagonists to be in a film. But I needed to find out myself in this film After the Spring. Yeah,
you had to kind of experiment on your parents first. But it's also experimenting on yourself.
Well, I think the biggest experience was on myself to feel, because I think many filmmakers, if you don't feel how it is to be the subject of your films, it's you need to know it to know others.
If you want to become a tattoo artist, your first tattoo has to be on yourself. Before they let you tattoo anybody else, you have to do it to yourself.
Well,
that's
okay. You should try it as well.
We got there. But this also brings me to something that I touched on earlier, which is the point where you decide editorially or when making the film how much of yourself will. I mean, there's moments in some of your films where I think Tomoko says, "You should be in the film, come into the film," and things like this. Yeah. And then, we see your face, we see your hands, you talk about your personal, intimate things. And in other films, you don't do that. And there's always a question of degree. Now, to you, is that an instinctive thing, or do you discuss it with your collaborators, or how does it work?
No, it was really instinctive. But I thought that, with Water Children, I was touching on such sensitive topics, and I asked women, to be incredibly intimate about telling about the children who died, and really, 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 stuff that people don't talk about easily. And then I thought, it's not right that I keep myself off this, like, oh, it's only about you. And I'm also a woman, and I'm in this project also for a reason. And I really liked it that Tomoko, the protagonist, turned the tables, and she said, now I want to interview you. You did interviews on me. Now we're going to do it the other way. And I just, I like it when my protagonist gives me this kind of, deals me that card. And because then something unexpected can happen. And there I really wanted to, I didn't want to be in a film, of course, I thought like I can do without. And actually when sometimes I coach young filmmakers and they make a film about, something very personal, and they always, in the first conversations, but I'm not going to be in my film. I say, haha. It's something, but it is, maybe it is just too vulnerable to say. And I think it's good if somebody starts from that, because then you're not so narcissistic. If you start with like, okay, I want to be my film, and it's okay. I have nothing against narcissistic films. It's just not that I'm this kind of filmmaker.
I think that maybe younger people or young film students, they kind of think of, I don't know, Michael Moore type of thing, where the film becomes about that person and everything else goes into the background. No disrespect to Michael Moore, but obviously there are 1,000 different ways of doing it, and you show that you can vary.
I think the only reason that you yourself are in a film, or you make a film very personal, is because you go from the personal to a bigger story about society. Like, for instance, many films are just about very big universal topics, and you use yourself, or you use your family, or you use, in that way, your protagonist to tell a story that goes further than their personal story. And if I don't find that link, I won't make this film, because then it stays only personal. And I think it is always very political, and I think it's always very much about how big history and big events shape our lives and shape whatever we shape our fate, and sometimes destroys our fate. So not faith, but fate. I hope my English is okay. But
it's an interesting crossover. I mean, you're making me think of the moment at the beginning of Turn Your Body to the Sun, which begins with Hitler and Stalin. And then we see, somebody's watching them, these giant figures of history. And then, of course,
drinking water.
Yeah, and then the film itself is about how people kind of got destroyed by these giant things, and we see these, incredibly harrowing pictures of people in the war, kind of naked, walking, marching, going through rivers, and being destroyed, and that kind of thing between the personal and the political, and the individual and the epic, is something that, again, you seem to be. You're able to kind of move that. It's like playing the violin. That you sort of make the connection between the two without it feeling forced. And it seems quite easy, but I know it must be incredibly difficult to do that. Is that an editing thing? Is that something where you work with because I think you normally work with collaborating editors. Is that something where you really kind of rely on them, or do you impose or present a certain way that you say, this is how we connect these individual stories with the history of the entire history of Europe in the 20th century, which is obviously
but that's already in the script, so it is something that I'm after. I just think my way of working is very often to connect, to go from a very specific individual point, and then the film broadens, and then you see it from one from one, personal start, you go to something really universal. And of course, the editing, oh my God, that's the most important process of it all, because but I always, I always work with editors and I give them always the credit, and they deserve the credit. But I'm always sitting next to them. It's not, and they need me as well, because, an editor can do anything. And they work with all these different persons, but, I'm really precise in how to tell the story in a most, with as little words as possible. And if you want to make stories which are really big, you really need to make it, what's the word, concise,
compact,
economic. Economic, in a way, economic, and still it needs to be also poetic. But so I think the editing is the most important thing, and I'm always there to kind of feel it if it's going the right way. But,
I'm just checking the running times, because all the films we've shown, and the maximum is like 90 minutes. Have you ever made a film longer than 90 minutes?
No. I think 90 is.
Which is, again, it's, considering the size of the subjects you're dealing with. And of course, editing isn't just about how long is the film. It's about rhythm and all that kind of thing. But again, the fact that you're able to do this and keep the discipline of not saying now the film will be 3 hours.
But that's maybe very Dutch to, that you don't want to overdo it. And I really think, if you have, sometimes it's just nice to have 3 endings. You think, but I love all those 3 endings. And I just, I like to cut it away. I also like to cut away weeds in my allotment garden. So it's really like, I like this feeling. It's too much. Let it.
Like Herlach says, only the weeds are growing. The thing is not working.
I
mean, watching Love is Potatoes, which I was completely knocked out by. I mean, I was kind of amazed by the film. It reminded me of Tarkovsky, and when somebody reviewed Mirror, and they said that, which is his masterpiece, and it says he goes after the great white whale of art, which is to tell the story of your country through your own life story. And if an artist can do that, then they've really killed Moby Dick. And watching this film again, the fact that it's about your kind of strange family and this strange cousin you have and the little house that you have and all that kind of thing, and then you have these animations and you do all this, and as I say, the kind of, but that is the kind of film that only somebody can make, I think, at a certain point in their career. I mean, if a person tries to do that as their first or second or even third film, I think there's going to be some problems. What advice do you give to young filmmakers who may be setting out, and in both in the kind of the macro and the micro, in terms of like, should they do it? Should they be a filmmaker, or should they go and do something else? How
questions?
Okay, here's a question.
Who am I?
How do you know whether or not you are a filmmaker?
Oh, I don't know. I think perseverance. It's one of the key perseverance. No, but I'm serious. I think it's even more perseverance is more important than talent in a way, because you can be hugely talented and not know what to do with your talent. And you need, I think, you need to find yourself a theme or a subject which is in some way, some hidden way, maybe connected to your life. Even if it's hidden, you don't need to talk about it, but you need to find something that is really gives you really strong emotion, so that you won't be bored with it for the coming 2 years.
So you have to feel it. It has to be a physical feeling.
Yes, I think everything is very physical in document or in filmmaking. When I watch a rough cut, I feel in my body when it's well done, when it's not well done. I really can feel it in my stomach. When I'm shooting a scene, I feel in my stomach if it's good or not. I even can, when I'm doing camera work myself, I can, when the scene is not really good, I feel I cannot really find the way to film it. And when something is really important going on, I'm always very worried. But then I know that it's happening, or I feel it, and that's a kind of intuition that comes probably with experience.
I was going to say, because when you were starting, did you have this feeling, or maybe you had it, but you didn't trust it?
Yeah, and you learn to trust the feeling, and you learn by not thinking about how things should be. You know, when you're finished film school or film academy or whatever, they always teach you how you should make a film, and then it's really nice to not do it, and then it only starts after finishing, and just don't be afraid to do it, and find yourself something that you really think I won't be bored, because a lot of themes will bore you in the end.
But you might be spending 2 years.
Yeah, because there's always more work and than you think, and your first several films, it's never paid well. So if there's other things you can do, when you like to be paid well, then please do so. Oh yeah, and one last thing, we had a really nice discussion, this morning with other filmmakers, not only documentary but fiction. It's really, we are so bad at asking that, also, if you're beginning, I don't know how beginning, but most people are maybe not beginning, to ask for what you're worth. So you go to the producer, said like, listen, this is the way I like to make my film. And if it's going to success, so you really need to be, not be afraid to feel your worth, because without us filmmakers, there will be no film festivals. And usually we're just so happy, oh, I can make my next film. I made the same mistake. Oh, there's a producer who wants to work with me. How fantastic, And then you're afraid to ask and set your own standard for it. Or and you need to be paid, and you need to be paid well. And I think maybe it's also a women thing more than a male thing, that we're also afraid to ask, but you need to live. And you need to live more than maybe when I started in 1997, when, I was used to live as a student, but housing prices were not so high, and we could, it still, then I thought, how stupid that I didn't
and the Netherlands Netherlands hadn't had decades of neoliberal economic administration.
Yeah.
May have made a difference.
But I think we always forget the question about money and how you get around, and how you use also festivals. I think you have, for instance, there's one festival, True False, and they have like this pay the artist way, that if filmmakers come, they get paid, but it's not being followed up by a lot of other festivals. And I think it's also something for filmmakers that you can ask, like, okay, is there a screening fee? We're also part of the equation. And so I have a really I don't, everybody's so different. So I feel really, not in a position to give a good advice about how you should make your film, or even not if you should not be bored by it. Maybe it's good when you're bored by it. There are no rules in that way. You just have to follow your instinct. It's a very instinctive way of being in the world. But coming back to money, something that is not really well talked of, I think, we all should, not think like, oh, thank you so much, I can do this job. Attitude.
And payment is a nice bonus. Oh, I get
payment
paid
is
too.
a nice bonus. Yeah. Oh, I get some money for it.
In Austria, this can never be talked about, because there are so many people in Austrian creative industries who don't need to work because they come from very wealthy backgrounds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that's
but you
also...
But you can never talk about it.
You can never... same thing with the Netherlands. Writers, Dutch writers, they all come from really wealthy backgrounds. That's why they can write books. But the same thing goes with filmmakers. And for instance, in Italy, where there's no funding for documentary filmmakers, it's an elitish way of, being in the world. And something is really very wrong with it.
I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
That's not to say that rich and posh and and aristocratic people can't make good films.
No,
I mean,
no, not
Visconti
at all.
was brought up in a castle.
Yeah, but the other people should also
Yeah,
be
they-
able
they
to.
should- I mean, it's a question of access.
Yeah.
So again, I mean,
It's access. Yeah.
you do teach, and when you teach, is this what do you think filmmaking can be taught, or is it
I'm
practical
not-
things? Is
I'm not
it confidence?
teaching it so much. I'm what they call in the Netherlands. I don't know how you call it here, coaching. So filmmakers with the first, second, third film, I kind of we talk about films and about whatever they need to be helped with. And I try to be a good listening ear and a kind of so. But I'm not teaching. I will be teaching a bit, but it's more masterclass like thing. Yeah, I'm not the kind of teacher who give kind of assignments or
But I have noticed that some of the most interesting younger filmmakers from the Netherlands, like Sandy Jarovic, I think she's from obviously ex-Yugoslavian background, and there are filmmakers again from sort of migrant communities who find the stories, and people always say, well, the reason why the Dutch don't make particularly good fiction films is that they're too rich and they don't need to tell those stories, and it's kind of boring to be rich and all that kind of thing. And it's like, well, there is poverty in the Netherlands, and there are social issues. And as I say, I think it's notable that they are emerging. But when you were saying about film festivals, your films are shown at film festivals. The television has also been, very strong for you. Gerlach has been a surprise box office hit in the Netherlands. How important is it for you that your films are shown at festivals and in cinemas? Because obviously, again, if you're a young filmmaker, the temptation to go and make a nice Amazon or Netflix series, which will be, you'll get a bit of a payday, but the film may never be seen in a cinema. To you, is it like cinema is the place where you like to see your films, or do you like to walk past? Because in the Netherlands, you're not supposed to close the curtains. So you can walk, in the evening, you can walk down the street and see what everybody's doing in the house, which I think is charming. And you can see what they're watching on television. And if they're watching your film, if they're watching Gerlach, that's nice. Yeah. But to you, is it like it's all the same, or you like the cinema
I think it's a different question. Do you want to have control over your film? Do you want to make a film that is maybe not suited for a streamer? If a streamer gives you carte blanche, why not? But I'm not sure if they do. Especially not for first-time filmmakers. Maybe
have you been approached or offered?
No, but no, not at all. I don't think they think I fit. But it's also up to you. It's hard to decide. But I think I have made some films that were kind of commissioned, and they're not on my CV. And I didn't even go to the premiere because I thought, well, it was interesting but it doesn't feel the same, and there is this intrinsic, joy of making something that is really yours, that can't. And then I want to make a film that I would like to watch myself. I think that is my only criteria, and then I don't think I will fit with big Amazon or whatever screeners, because it's just not what I want. And I saw a lot of beautiful films also during this festival, and I was like, yeah, those films, they won't fit either. And those are the films that influence me. And and it's maybe more consolation, but then. What I tell myself as a consolation, but what maybe also as a kind of reminder why I make films. I think sometimes it's better to have one person who is really deeply affected by your film than have millions watching it and forgetting it. And but in the end, it all boils down on what you as a person want to make. What gives you the most joy in doing what you want to do, and that goes for everything. Every art, you can. It's up to you to choose.
I think we watched the same film yesterday, The Human Hibernation.
Yes, I was thinking about that as well.
Cornelio Castro film, which is a million miles away from Netflix, and anybody watching that would. But again, you can sense that she had that feeling when she was working with the cows and the raccoons. And if you haven't seen the film, you're wondering what we're talking about. Yeah. But it was obvious there that this had to be seen in a cinema. You know, you
totally,
couldn't watch
and I also coming back to your question about cinema, I just love to be in this black hole, watching with other people, and it's an experience. You know, I feel sad so little people nowadays get into this experience because it's so interesting, and it is not, people think it's elitish or whatever. But it's always different.
But we learn,
and I need it as well.
We learn from Amsterdam because in Austria and Vienna we have non-stop Kino Abo, which is you buy €20 and you can see as many films as you want. This was stolen from the Dutch idea.
Yeah, and it works. Cinephile Pass, yeah, it works. Yeah. So people really go to cinemas, and but I like it when it's on the festivals, and people say like, oh, festivals, in the end for your film it doesn't really, those 20-30 people here and there, it doesn't add. But I don't, it's not the same kind of focus people have it. Well, when you see things on TV, when I watch things on TV, I just always walk away, and we're all so bad at doing it, and
too many distractions.
And then you have a different experience. I think one of my best experience was I just started film school, and then I went to Rotterdam Film Festival, and I saw a film of this Sokurov. I didn't know who he was, and I watched it, and I was really irritated by this, very slow filmmaker. I thought it was all very pretentious. And then the film stayed with me. So I was irritated. I wanted to go away. I couldn't go away because there was people sitting next to me. And still there are images from that film that I see as a memory of my own.
Was it Mother and Son?
No, it was Elegy from Russia. Oh, yeah. And there is like this black lake with snow, and there is this child who is breathing, and I think that I experienced them. It's not a film, so the line between film and your own experience becomes blurred.
And if you rewatched it, you might find it was very different from how you remember.
Yeah, probably. But that is what film does, and when the line is being blurred, that you really think that you experienced something that is really yours, that is, what we're seeking. Isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why we bother having a film festival after all of these years. And we still sit in the dark and the tickets are selling, which is nice to see. But I want to ask about doc makers, because I noticed that a lot of your earlier films were made with Zeppers and various other companies. And then you helped to set up doc makers?
It was a very funny experience. So 2011, we had Occupy Amsterdam, Occupy New York. And I was just wondering why nobody was making a film about Occupy Amsterdam. And I quite randomly from friends, colleagues, we were 4 filmmakers. I said like, come on, let's make this film together, because they're a collective. Let's be a collective, make this collective film. And then when we were shooting it, we were really good at organizing it. And then we thought, okay, maybe we should start a collective, and that's with 4 filmmakers, and we have 1 producer. And we're now 10 years further, 13 years even. And it's very successful in the Netherlands, and it just feels different from having a producer. We are the ones who chose her, kind of. She works, and we have Ilja Roman. She's an amazing producer. But the thing is that she produces our films and some other films, and we all feel, of course, it's our company, so we should take care of it, take care of her. But still, it's different than going to a producer and asking, "Oh, can I make my film?" And it also works because it's not that we're all very indie filmmakers or something. We're very different, and that makes it works as well. But it's more that you feel solidarity with each other, and solidarity about how you also want to be paid, but also what the film is about, And we all know also a lot about, really the producing part of filmmaking. But that helps to be together, and it feels like a house that we want to live in. And the funny thing is, like, when you have like this, we had like this financial advisor and said, how big do you want to become, and how much profit do you want to make? So and we said, well, no, we want not a house to rent out to make a profit with it, but we want a house to live in. This is our house. We want to live in it, and we don't want to grow too much. We want to stay as we are.
And has it been the same original four all the way through?
Yeah. Well, it was a coincidence. We were all women, and we had a Dutch soundman who also worked on this Occupy film, and he was just so not blended in. So he was not part of the collective anymore, and now we're only women, and it was not on purpose, but it works. Yeah.
And once you've established this, I mean, as you say, you couldn't imagine going back to a private company, and
it's we're not that different in a way, and it's not that you can make a huge profit anyway with filmmaking. So on the other hand, I got a lot of respect also for other documentary producers, but it's just the way that you need to go and ask a producer, oh, can I have insight in the financial side, or what do you think about my film, or whatever. It's when I sign a contract, it's like Zapper's film, but also Doc Makers, but then it's different. Gives me the opdracht, how you say it, the assignment to make a film.
Commission.
The commission, I gave myself the commission. It's something is not right about that as well. But with Doc Makers, I can, handle it more, and than I could.
And the success of Herlack at the box office, I mean, how much of that do you get to see? Because obviously the cinema owners take a big chunk, and there's a distributor.
There's
and,
a distributor.
And there's all these different
there are
elements.
funds that has to be paid back. So a little comes back. So I don't know. It's like some percent, but it's not much. But the good thing about the Netherlands is that we have not a bad financing system. So especially not when you also have television money. And well, it would be nice if it would be more, but it's okay. But if you start, as I see many documentary filmmakers, they have to pitch their films like 20 times on all these fora and go to festivals, and oh my God, and then only they start to work, and they really need to make a profit. But having said that, their films are usually more widely seen because they already have been to all this pitching fora. So that's the downside of having a good financing system, that you don't need to pitch.
I mean, I have friends who spend their lives pitching and pitching and pitching, and you say, maybe you'll make a film at some point. Well, no, we've got the next pitch. So it's it's nice to go to these pitches. They give you nice food. They put you in a nice hotel. You meet nice people. You go to some nice city, and much nicer than making a film. I mean, maybe they should make a film about the pitching. I do want to ask you about the Dutch political situation, but there is time for questions from the audience, because we've had a nice talk, but maybe somebody is burning a question. Don't be shy. The Dutch political situation, how do you see it specifically? Because obviously the Dutch, the last election, the far right got a lot of votes, all this.
Yeah.
And traditionally the far right and right-wing parties are not hugely in favor of culture or public broadcasting and all this. So the ecology of Dutch sort of filmmaking, which has evolved kind of in this weird way over the decades, you as somebody that's kind of in the middle of all that, do you think it's resilient enough to withstand the worst that might happen, or do you really fear for the next few years?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but they can really. We had already a really bad situation with culture, with a former minister who really cut, I think, 25% from the cultural budget, and now the same can happen again. And I'm just not sure how. Of course, you cannot, cut all the institutions, but it's hard to predict what will happen, but it looks a bit bleak. On the other hand, I think They cannot just, things go always much more slowly. So, and I hope in the end they just cannot make, they will not be in power, or, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm in denial because it's so bad, this situation. But I'm really bad at, talking about politics. Though I read a lot.
Maybe if you bring it and sort of, you do have a child who is 10 years old. I mean, do you have conversations with the child about these sorts of things? And like, because obviously, like the Netherlands that you were born into, well, Russia that you were born into has had some changes since those years, and the Netherlands has undergone rapid changes. And is this the kind of thing that you talk about with your child, or do you keep the child in a nice, happy space?
Well, the child watches children news every day, so he is aware of the situation in Gaza and everything that is around, and the wars and things that are going on, and also in the Netherlands. So they're really that we have like great children TV, and they explain it in a way that they should also explain it to grown-ups. So I watch it with him. So yes, no, he's not. I wish I could hold him more in a kind of childish world, but he's really keen on watching TV, and they talk about it. It's like, I need to watch the news because tomorrow on the playground we're discussing it. So we said, no, you get too excited, you have to have a good night's sleep. And I said, no, but I need to. So I don't know, a really serious school. So he is aware, but he's not so much aware. Well, and this Wilders, he's a bad guy, the right-wing Dutch guy. And
from what we see of the Dutch educational system, and in this festival we had Miss Keats' Children by the Latastes, which is my favorite Dutch documentary of the last 10 years. Love is Potatoes is my second favorite.
Oh, that's nice.
But we see Miss Keats' Children, and this is like it looks like a fantastic education system the Netherlands has. Again, this might be unthreatened, and there could be all this, but like your son goes to a good school and has a good situation. So education, which is always comes down to education. Everything comes down to education. It seems as though that at least is something which the Netherlands is keeping a good.
Well, let's talk about this later because it's not as you think it is. We have massive problems, but I think many countries have them, and I think education system also fell in the trap of this neoliberalism, and we have to get out of it. But that's a different discussion. I think the whole of the Netherlands should get out of that trap. But
I just believe when I see a film, I believe it. I'm terribly.
No, but this Juf is amazing, and there are fantastic teachers, and there are fantastic schools, and there are a lot of not fantastic things as well. Yeah, going on. Yeah, I think the Finnish system is now the best.
They have 100% literacy in Finland. Yeah. This is always the worst question to ask to a filmmaker. What is next after Gerla?
Oh, the worst question. Yeah,
something comes out of this.
I'm not sure, but the starting point is so I have a lot of ideas, but the starting point now is but don't get me. Maybe it will never take wings.
We'll switch off the live stream at this point. So
exactly. That's the best thing. It's I want to go together with my very old friends. They're Ukrainian. They're from Kiev. They are in Berlin. They fled the war, and for the first time in 2 years, they want to go back to see how their city has changed. And I want to go with them as a starting point for the film, to tell a bit about the past or what is happening now. And well, a lot of topics can be kind of hooked onto this, and I think like Dana Linsen wrote, and then I was like, oh yes, that's true, that the films I made are classic and essayistic at the same time, and I think I like this classical approach a bit, as a starting point, and then you just go off. To some other place.
you mentioned Dana, and her text is available on the website. There's a extract from it here. But if you want to know more about, and it's a compact text. She manages to cover your work in quite a short period. So she's quite mirroring what you do.
Yeah. And she said yesterday to me, because she rewatched all the films, and now it's actually now that I need to write this essay, but I need more words, and now I kind of get into it. So
I think the nice thing that your friends and we're aware of is that A, you're maybe the best person to make this film. We know it's going to be a good one, and B, you'll do it in 90 minutes, which is really, to make a wonderful film is wonderful, and if it can be done in people's lives these days. I mean, they watch endless TV, but they say, oh, the film's 3 hours. Oh, I couldn't watch that.
Yeah. And 90 minutes is already too much for many people, but whatever. Maybe we should make only short films, like 5 minutes long or 10 minutes. Yeah.
Well, we have the Vienna Shorts Festival coming next month, but yeah, as I say, I think it's if I had to get anybody to tell a story, you'd be definitely top of the list. So I think watching the films has been educational, informative, illuminating, and it's opened my eyes to your work. And we look forward to the next 27 years as your oeuvre continues to grow. Please join me in saying dank u wel to our guest, Aliona van der Horst.
Thank you.